if no one's around me and left to my own druthers, yeah, I'll piss in a jug and so I don't have to leave the room, right? But the reality of it is that's a luxury that I've afforded myself. Strangely, it doesn't sound as luxurious when I say it out loud.
Hey, this video is brought to you by sweetwatermusic.com. So when I was building this office, brand new office here, I needed a whole bunch of stuff, a new desk, new studio monitors, audio stuff, video stuff. I found everything at sweetwatermusic.com. In addition to music gear, they also stock Rode audio equipment and Blackmagic cameras. And it's just like everything that I need is all on just one website. So if you take a look at the link in the description, you'll find the list of gear that I use from sweetwatermusic.com. Go check it out. It supports the channel. Thank you so much. Also, this entire video has been transcribed by sheethappenspublishing.com. If you want to learn really cool music by Cannibal Corpse, Black Dahlia Murder, my band Archspire is on there. Check out the link in the description, sheethappenspublishing.com. Use my code REDEEM for 15% off at checkout. On to the video.
I wore that jacket. I tried out your jacket. Where did you get that jacket?
Oh, this one?
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, the one that looks like a welcome mat or something like that.
Like the hide of Fozzie Bear.
Yeah.
I got it from Amazon. It was $20. I got two of them, but I gave the other one to my buddy because she was freezing, and I got one at Fields the other day for another $20.
Now Fields
they're like one of the. It's the material that is made out of pop bottles. So if it gets near a heat source, your entire being ignites, which is not ideal. But if that doesn't happen, they're great.
Okay, so I want to go back to the store that you said. You're talking about Fields. You're talking about like an old Canadian staple, basically. This is like a store that doesn't really exist in Vancouver, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think there's a couple of locales. There's one out in Surrey, I think.
Oh, no way. Okay. That's an old store.
But I think that the proliferance of this type of material and how cheap it is to produce has resulted in almost any store that sells things cheaply having a variation of this jacket.
Right.
But I find it's like at this particular point, I'm just all I'm doing is studio stuff, right? I'm just constantly recording from morning to night, other than interviews, and it's like when you wake up and you just have something that's like putting on a robe in some way. You can rely on its warmth,
sure, and
then just laziness prevails, and then you just don't take it off.
What do you? So your day right now is mostly sitting? Is that what you're doing?
Yes and no. I mean, we've got. I'm in the midst of this 3 or 4 record thing, and this Moth project is this next one, and it requires like so many logistical hurdles to be bested, and seemingly every day. So I was commenting to somebody the other day that one of the most unexpected parts about becoming a professional musician is how little music you actually do.
Bro. Totally.
Bro. Most of your days are just logistics. It's like answering mails or trying to figure out, problem solve some sort of technical thing.
Yeah.
But right now I'm in the midst of trying to finish the orchestration and choir for this thing I've been writing. And it has to be, I have to have the first act into the orchestrator tonight. And then the second act has to be to everybody by Sunday. And then the band was just here. And then, in theory, I'll be able to delegate all the grunt shit from here on out to people, where if I can establish the framework of what it is that I'm looking to achieve at this stage, then they can just kind of go, which sounds great, because I just want to watch how it's made right now.
I do love that show too. That show's awesome.
I do. I saw one the other day. They were making they had some suspicious orange paste that apparently was sweet. But it's like when you see things in that format, it's such an abstraction that you think, why would humans eat any of this shit? And then I found something similar in the closet, made it directly after.
Okay. Talking about being a musician, you're talking about how it's made. Where do they find the musicians to write the music for how it's made? Because that is the most bonkers shit. Like if you listen to it, bro, it is like it's atonal and dancey, but not next time, just only focus on the music, and it's
I have, man. And it was a difficult wank, but I pulled it off. And you know what I think is now it's just going to be AI that does it, and it's just so much cheaper, right? But I also think that that when I think about who was actually writing that stuff, because it obviously wasn't AI, I think they're probably either profoundly boring people or just the most grounded, like lovely people to spend time with, because that's what comes naturally to them. They're like, yeah, man, I just want to write this. This is my heart. This is my whole deal. Is like, I've got a Juno keyboard and, and I got a tempo map and we're making music about strudels.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So when you're, I noticed, like, I'm just looking around the room. I'm listening to you, but I'm also looking around. You have a pretty crazy studio, but what really catches my eye is this whiteboard in the background. What is the whiteboard? I can't read anything. I'm just like curious. Is that like songs or composition? Is that in a song or what is it?
Well, I think I'm kind of I confuse myself in the ways that the creative process functions for me, because I think I've got a real chaotic mind, and as a result of that, I like making sure that everything in my world is really organized. Like I like having everything ergonomically placed, and there's a certain cable for this. It's like pretty OCD, but it's not because my nature is such. My nature is actually chaotic. So I relegate certain parts of my creative world to chaos, and one of which is like a board like that.
Right.
Where as opposed to, it's like you're containing your anarchy. You're just like, all right, fuck it, this all goes here, but just not here because that's nice and clean. Right. So basically, that is a sketchboard, the third iteration of it for the Moth. So Mike Keneally and Darby and James were up here over the past couple of weeks, and part of what makes the Moth so interesting to me is the narrative is informed by the music as opposed to the other way around. So typically, if someone's scoring for a film, you've got a scene and it's like, oh, we need zombie music or something. And you have to kind of pretend you care about a theremin. And then I think that in this realm, what we're trying to do is I write the music and then try to organize the parts so that they can illustrate the narrative as it goes. And that whiteboard, long story, incredibly long, acts as a sketch pad for everybody that was involved with it over the past week to be able to manipulate. Okay, this should actually go here. What if we try this here? It's sort of a fluid way to arrange a record at this stage, right?
So it's like just a different visualization tool to kind of organize parts.
Yeah, I find that it's like my process benefits from a bit of chaos.
Yeah.
If it's contained, like I like having, for example, a garbage can that I don't have to sort in the studio. I bought a pee jug as well. Like if you go online, I think it's pjug.com.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going there.
No, trust me. Check out Blue Waffle while you're at it.
I'll check out Lemon Party.
But what it is it was $50 for this jug, because when I get into my head while I'm working, I don't want to leave the room, right? I don't want to interact with people. One of the most distracting things is leaving the room and then having to have like an inane conversation about weather,
right?
Which, it's like you leave and someone's like, sunny, isn't it? And you're like, yeah, yeah. So one of the ways that I've tried to mitigate the potential of running into social scenarios of any sort is by buying a $50 pee jug.
Right.
And it's actually, it's literally, here, I'll show you.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So, and it says right on it, pee jug. Right?
Yeah.
I guess it's hard to tell, but it says right on it.
Right.
You can basically see, pee jug.
Yeah.
So this gets full of piss. And there's really something to be said for not having to leave your environment. And as a human being, this is a terrible trait because it sounds not only preposterously up one's own ass, but it's also like, dude, you can't piss outside.
Right.
But if you have the option, pee jugs, all right. $50 is pretty steep though.
Is this conversation actually sponsored by Piss Jug? It was P Jug? Yes, pjug.com, right?
It's P Jug.
Okay.
Piss Jug, you don't want that one, man.
No.
That's a knockoff.
That's the knockoff.
Yeah, it's no good.
That's fair.
No good.
Have you ever heard of Howard Hughes? Do you know Howard Hughes?
Not the he's the guy that was the airplane dude.
He's the
I see where
airplane
you're going
dude.
with this.
Yeah. Let me check your fingernails.
Well, the thing is, I think that The difference between a character like that and a character like myself is I think that I work to provide myself the latitude to rationalize this sort of behavior. But in real life, I mean, if I can't do that, I'm probably going to survive. You know?
You know what? While I'm thinking about this, you actually are a lot like Howard Hughes. If I'm being
Was he good looking?
Well, I mean, in a movie, Leonardo DiCaprio may or may not play you. I don't know.
Sure, yeah,
but he also did big projects, huge fucking projects where he would like because he came from what was it, like the family in Texas. It was like it was like a tool, like a oil rig tool company business or whatever. And so he was rich as fuck, right? And so he would get all these planes and just have crazy like fever dream filming sessions where it's just they're going in. But that's kind of what you do also. Like Ziltoid is like a really big thing. Like it's bigger than you'd expect from a metal musician.
It is, but at the same time, it's I do it only because I'm fortunate to be able to. It's not like I often am critical of the type of artistry that seems to rationalize just shitty behavior on behalf of the process. Like I've got zero desire to cut my ear off for the work or allow my family to suffer as a result of my obsession with any of these things. It's like family and friends and mental health will win out over any of the artistry, just because I feel that tendency to fetishize the process is just one of the biggest problems with the whole thing. It's like it adds a level of importance to something that we're just frankly like, it's just such a privilege to be able to make music that if I'm, if no one's around me and left to my own druthers, I'll piss in a jug and so I don't have to leave the room. Right. But the reality of it is that's a luxury that I've afforded myself. Strangely, it doesn't sound as luxurious when I say it out loud.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on a good point because like nothing makes me more sad, and nothing makes me like I sometimes cry about Chris Farley. And
he was a shame about him. It was a shame about him.
And that's the exact shit you're talking about. It's a dude who like looked at what's the Animal House guy?
Belushi.
Yeah, he looked at Belushi as his idol. And so, it's like he absolutely deified this guy who died at an early age because of drugs, poor lifestyle, but burnt so brightly, right?
I agree. That's a great point. And I think what it also brings to mind is and it's something that I've struggled with other fellow musicians about when I speak about accountability, because there's so much of it that seems to come back where it's like, hey, listen, as soon as you relinquish your art to the world, art, music, whatever you want to call it, what other people extrapolate from that is none of your business and concern, sometimes I've been told. And I feel that's actually contradicted by what you just pointed out with Chris Farley, because what gets normalized as a result of some of the behaviors that he wanted to emulate didn't come with like a caveat. That was like, listen, the reason why we're reacting like this or we're acting like this and our world has become, synonymous with that type of chaotic lifestyle, is often just because of some sort of trauma or something that had happened that they're needing to compensate for that by being validated by people or what, I'm not a psychologist, but I also feel that my point is still valid in that I think it's important for us to vet our reasons. You don't have to change the intent. Like if you choose to make something, or if I choose to make something that's super destructive, it's okay as long as I can stand behind it. But I think where it becomes problematic is if you claim things as being catharsis or whatever, and then you end up being a representative of something that you didn't really put enough thought into, and it can, people are going to emulate what. And again, that just sounds like moral grandstanding. It's not meant to. I just feel that for myself, the ramifications of creating content with a conscious removal of accountability to whatever comes out of it has resulted in my world resonating with that shit. And it's just a 1-2, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, my experience has led me to believe that if you don't want that, don't do that.
Right.
You know, it's as simple as that, right?
When you're talking about this kind of stuff, you seem like, and I mean, I spoke with you briefly, but when was that? January? Almost, yeah, maybe 7
Yeah, down in San Diego.
Yeah, and so when you're speaking about that kind of stuff, it's like you clearly have so much thought put into it, and you clearly have like spent a lot of time introspective, and I think that's really important as a musician. But then you like make dumb dick jokes on stage. Like, are you like? Is that just? I feel like that might be kind of common. Somebody who has high IQ, high intelligence when it comes to, you know, being introspective is also like laughing at someone shitting their pants, and that's like a common trait.
I guess it depends on whether or not you think you're smart. You know,
right? Sure.
Like, I think I'm clever enough to get by.
Sure.
But I certainly don't think I'm like gifted intelligence. I just think I'm kind of, you know, I'm at that awkward space with intellect where I'm like smarter than I wish I was, because it makes me question things, and not smart enough to really come to any like conclusion about it.
Right.
Right. In this weird, like, what if kind of thing.
Yeah.
But really more than that, more than any kind of like reflection of one's intellect based on their tendency to like dick jokes. Sure. It's just, I think humans are fucking dumb as shit, and I'm a human and I'm dumb as shit. I mean, it's like there's and the preposterousness of the existential quandaries that we find ourselves in as a species, combined with the gorilla is like fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny.
Hilarious. And I find in my own work, I'm often reminded of like the hilarity of it by the moments where I feel like what I'm doing is of really some significance. You know, I might come to some moment creatively where I'm like, wow, that was actually really cool, or you know, that thought doesn't offend me in some way. Mm-hmm. But then that's juxtaposed by, like, I was talking to my buddy earlier today. I've had to shit like so much more than usual over the past 4 or 5 days, and it's like the problem with it is because the same thing as the pee jug, when I'm focused, it's like anything that's a distraction like that, just it's like so stupid. It's you can be going down this avenue of intellectual / existential, you know, creative output or lyrical whatever. But then you have to shit all the time. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like nothing about that isn't funny. It's like, it's like, I can't decide if the funniest part is just the primal nature of it, or how juxtaposition of our thoughts about how clever we are is like, we're constantly being reminded like just what apes we are by, you know, I gotta fuck, I gotta shit, I gotta piss, I gotta eat. You know what I mean?
I mean, do you think that the Academy Award for Best Picture next year that's going to star Meryl Streep would be improved or made worse by Meryl Streep having to take like a 5-minute dump in the middle of the movie? Like,
for me personally, or just in general?
I guess you personally. I'm asking
you.
It'd
be awesome.
It'd be awesome.
I'd buy it on release. I think for their demographic, though, they probably want to vet that idea a little bit, because I think that
focus group it.
Yeah, focus group. It's because you'd have to have like, I wonder how that would even play out. Like because the day that would be happening, everybody would be stressed. Like they'd be super stressed because they're like, dude, this is the day.
Right.
Yeah. Like Meryl has to take a dump in front of me. And we gotta make sure she's comfortable and all this.
Right. Yeah.
But you see, those are the things. I think that's fucking funny, and it's what I find so interesting is how there's a lot of people that like equate the existential anguish that comes from being a average intelligence human with being indicative of some sort of like true understanding of shit.
Yeah.
And so a lot of time those conversations are just so po-faced. You know, it's like sacred geometry, bro. But at the end of it, it's like, dude, it's the seriousness in which it's delivered that I think underlines how fucking ridiculous it is.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I the awe of the universe and the awe of just the nature of the absurdity of being a human being is fundamental in the work that I do, because it's all rooted in like, holy fuck, this is crazy.
Right.
But juxtaposed, of course, with like we have no idea. And man, I'm sure you're the same. But do I ever find myself irritated when people claim to have any idea? I'm like, oh, go fuck yourself,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah, of course.
I know what they reason here.
Yeah, right.
Be in the moment. Books 1 through 6.
Yeah, they're trying to sell you something. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
always the case.
that's it.
I do want to talk to you a little bit about. I mean, I would love to just talk more about shitting. I don't. That sounded weird. But if my wife was here, if my wife was
arousing.
Here, yeah, exactly. She'd be just. I mean, you've never met somebody who will laugh more at someone shitting than my wife. My wife is just like. It's actually, I won a lot of brownie points for, no pun intended, through doing dumb jokes. But anyway, not shitting myself. Anyway, next thing.
Well, I think this is the nature of, I've been married for 36 years.
Right.
And yeah, my wife thinks very little of what I find funny is funny.
Right.
And I think
that's funny.
I think that's where my humor goes, is like just the confusion is like is worth it for me, right?
Dude, confusion is pretty good. Okay,
it's
so
pretty good.
I would love to ask you this question. I was thinking all day because I wanted to ask you this, and I don't know what your take is on this. Are you a fucking riff guy?
Like sometimes.
You know what I mean?
Sometimes.
Like
your music, I think I'm too lazy.
Doesn't come across necessarily as a riff guy, but then you do have banger riffs. Like what?
I have some, but it's only if I stumble across them. I mean, the people who I've met who are like wicked riff writers, just everyone is like another winner.
Right.
They view the process of creating riffs with their guitar as like it's like a vocation. Like they'll sit down and they'll document it, and this goes into here, and to me, it's like my writing process. It's almost like the music is this like irritating necessity.
Right.
So the themes of the process and how that creative inclination like moves from moment to moment in one's life, you know, and how it mirrors experience and trauma and joy and success or whatever, is really where my interests lie. And a lot of times, whatever music facilitates that theme, I'm cool with.
Right.
So I have to admit that the logistics that are involved in trying to make creative statements that are rooted in something other than what's like immediately apparent. And that's not to say it's clever. It's just how I think, right? Like I like the idea of psychology. I like the idea. I mean, it's just interesting to me. So my work has evolved in such a way. And as such, the guitar is so meat and potatoes for me. Every now and then I'll have a riff, but what I've been doing lately as the profile has grown for the career, which I'm very grateful for, is I just hire guitar players that are better than me.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then I'm like, I'll like Frankenstein a riff together and be like, yeah, if you could play this better than me, that would be really awesome. Because then live I can just gesticulate wildly and then the riff still remains. But the answer is I have some riffs. I'm about a 30% or 27% riff guy.
All right. I appreciate your accuracy on that number. Thank you so much. I'll write that one down.
Thanks.
You know what? It reminds me of, because I just watched Hans Zimmer at Rogers Arena here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, playing with Guthrie Govan. And dude, that's exactly what he did. Hans Zimmer is a guitar player. I mean, I think he might actually be primarily a guitar player.
Yeah.
But he hired Guthrie so that he could just watch him
have
play.
his ideas articulated.
Yeah, well, he just adds so 100%. Much that Hans could never really do. He's just like,
well, that's it.
You know,
that's why I've been working with Keneally for the past 8 years, I guess. I mean, the guy's just such a wealth of musical knowledge, and he's so much. The thing I like so much about Mike is that he's not precious about his ideas, so he's not condescending when he's able to explain something to you that you don't understand. So I feel that on my own side, if I'm able to be honest with somebody in my world about like, you do this better than me, and I don't understand this, you know, I'd like to understand. So if you could explain it to me, then at least I don't have to feel insecure about pussyfooting around it with you, right?
Right.
And I think that there's very few really high-level players that are able to stand away from their process in such a way. And I think that there's a few musicians in my world that I really respect because I feel they value their lives more than their music. Morgan's another guy.
Okay.
And I think that is really admirable because it keeps the music in a place of fluidity, because I think that when you are so connected to your music, like, this is my vision, this is my thing, this is what I need, this is what I need you to do this exactly, and you stand there and all this sort of thing. What ends up happening is that the music takes on such an importance that you lose the sense of play with it.
Right.
And I would much rather work with people now that I can delegate things to.
Yeah.
For example, for this Moth show, I've got to get another guitar player or two, because I don't want to play guitar for the thing. I want to write the parts. But so much of it is based on vocals that when I was, right before we started calling, I was recording this riff, and I was just like, it fucking sucks to play and sing at the same time.
Yeah, sure.
So if I can find people that do it really well, then I can just put my arms in the air.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's you're not so much as, because I think I've gone through this too. I've been playing guitar for 20 something, 24 years, something like that. And you go through periods where you're like, I want to impress people. And then you're like, I don't give a fuck about that anymore. And the technical ability of you being able to sing and play that riff at the same time no longer matters to you.
No.
At one point it might have.
And not only that, it's such a liberating experience to be able to look at, for example, another guitar player that maybe there's been some sort of silent competition between you.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. It's everybody's buddies, but they're just like, oh, cool riff, man. Did you play that with an open string? You're like, no, yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
And, but I find that there's been something super liberating about being with a guitar player that has something invested in being really good, and then just letting him be the best in the room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Totally.
like, dude, if that's so important to you, then that saves me shitloads of work, because that's hard to play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to be great, then if you could learn that so it's like killer, then we both win.
Okay, so I'm going to put you in a position where you're in the writing room, and I don't really know how you collaborate, whether it's in your room there or it's in a rehearsal studio, wherever it is. You put yourself in that kind of spot. You have this idea, you've been working on it for a week. You're like, this riff, I'm not a riff guy necessarily. Got 27% of my shit is riffs. Sure, I'm 27%er. But the other guitar player, his idea is just better. So what do you do?
Yeah, then he should have it, and he should be credited for it.
Correct.
I mean, it's insane not to.
Yeah.
I think the thing this is where the preciousness of music is a liability. That's what I was meaning about, like, the need to control it in such a way. And I mean, guilty of it very much so when I was younger, for sure. And then I guess for me, once we had kids and I was able to kind of offshore that sense that, what I was creating was like some sort of silly legacy or something, and more just be like, listen, your ability to play, record, and write music is something that is you should be really grateful for this. It's not essential. You're going to live without it. And so if you do have the opportunity to do it, then if I come at it from the point of view of what makes it best is going to be the best thing. However, that being said, I've been doing it for so long that I've managed to establish goalposts with collaborators that make it so that we don't have to step on each other's toes. And a lot of that for me is as simple as saying, and upon reflection, maybe I've written a piece of music, but if I really sit with it, I could say the things that make or break this section are that push on the beat there, that offbeat China there, and that quirky little thing that happens in the kick drum, so that when the snare comes back, for a second there you felt like you went out of time, and you actually did gain a quarter note, but where it comes back in makes it like invisible. So if we can maintain those, everything else can be better.
Right.
And so a lot of times when I'm working with people, with bass, for example, I'm able to have parameters that are pretty clear cut. I'm able to say, this section, I'd really like it to be as the demo. This section can have some fun with it. But the parameters for it are like, I don't like it to be busy. Tuning's really important to me. And this stop here and this pause here, make or break that section. And go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the orchestrator, the same thing with the choir, same thing with Keneally, same thing with any of these cats. It's like the nature of collaboration requires, in my case, only the vision to be preserved. But the vision is not so specific that it's immutable. It's an emotional reaction. So what I'm chasing is less about the specifics of what the guitar is doing and what the drums are doing, and more about how does the interaction between these elements make me feel, and is it in line with what I find gets burned in the creative impetus, like in the moment where I'm coming up with an idea. There's like this an emotional thing that it's like easy to recall. It's like, oh, it's red or it's blue or it's spiky or it's soft or whatever. And so the process of collaboration with people, specifically amazingly talented people, is if we start from learning the arrangement, then just tell me why you want to change a section. Because I think a lot of times in the past where I faltered, like specifically with drummers, is they couldn't explain to me why that fill was appropriate there, because I kept thinking, to me, that fill just draws attention to the drums. You know what I mean? And it's like, if we're being honest with each other, I don't think that needs to be there. And it's not because I didn't write it. It's just about vetting the intention. So a lot of times with performers now, if I'm working with them and they have an idea, I just need to know why. Like, cool idea. Why would we do that? And if they're able to say, well, that adds tension to this next downbeat, then I'm like, oh yeah, that's fucking great.
And it might also draw you to things about the song that you wouldn't necessarily have known, 100%. Which is super cool. Like, I mean, when I've worked with our drummer in the last 4 albums that we wrote together, he would oftentimes have like, I want to change the kick frequency here because it's all double. I mean, we're playing a technical death band. It's all like, it's as high velocity as much as you can. But he's like, but if we don't change the frequency of the kicks here, then the entire song is this. I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't even notice that. Like, I'm so in my own bullshit sometimes that it's really great to be like, just like somebody poking, be like, yo, don't forget to pay attention to this entire window of fucking responsibility in this song that you need to pay attention to. Otherwise the song's going to suck.
I agree, but at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing to be in our own bullshit, because I often think of any creative venture as being like a Dungeons and Dragons team, which not only dates me, but underlines everything uncool that can be. But I often think, like, when I was a kid, because sex was in short order, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Sweet.
And the thing that made a good team is like one character is powered in this one aspect of their personality.
Right.
Like the wizard can really think, but he's got a spongy head.
Yeah,
so you need the guy with the battle axe who's maybe not quite as much of a thinker, but he's going to protect that guy's spongy head. Right.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And so if you're working and aware of your own attributes and your own liabilities as a collaborator, then I think it's so much easier to make progress quickly, because you could be like, oh, the project, I recognize my role in it is to establish the vision and to like be a captain of it in a sense, but I recognize in my own skill set that the job at hand that is going to take this to the next level, this team member does way better than me.
Yeah.
So what possible reason other than pride would I want to try and convince the team that I can do it better than him? It's such a waste of time. So it's like, listen, man, we've established the parameters. We know what the vision is. Here's my guidelines for what it's going to work and what it's not. But that's your forte. So if you wouldn't mind us doing that and let me know when you're done, that would save so much time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously a very mature way to look at it. I think it probably took you, I would guess, a while to get there. Probably. Oh
yeah. Yeah. And I'm still getting there, I think. But again, it's like, not to put too fine a point on it, but the things in my life that were asked of me as a human being that were aside from the career were the cutting your ear off, pissing in a jug thing is just like a comedy sketch rather than a practical thing. But, kids and parents getting older and people passing away and the responsibilities, for wife or health or things like this, you have to be able to relegate your creative freedom and the chaos board up there to moments where you can say, okay, I'm comfortable enough here to let that out. But keeping in mind the fact that these are luxuries as a creator, to have the opportunity to be, erratic or chaotic and everything is such a first world thing, man. Like I can't even imagine that the rest of my life, the times that require me to be rational about the decisions that need to be made for anything, mortgage or anything, is an entirely different set of parameters intellectually and emotionally. And those are the ones that I think are more refined as I get older. And those are also the ones that allow me to not need the validation of some of those things that I used to. Mm-hmm. And how it used to manifest for me, which in hindsight is fucking insane, is I was so insecure about like mixing or something that as opposed to listening to other people or collaborating with other people, I would be really protective of my work. I'd be really protective of my process because I didn't want to be criticized. Sure. I didn't want someone to tell me that what I was doing could be better. And I think the reason I didn't want that is because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. You know, right. I was so I never went to school for it. I never learned how to play properly or engineer properly or mix. And so as opposed to just being like, okay, retroactively, we're going to reverse engineer that and ask those questions. So as opposed to guessing about what frequency the kick drum exists at the same time as a bass in this tuning, it's like, okay, well, there's got to be a process to learn.
Yeah.
And once I started asking people in my team who I knew intrinsically wanted to know or wanted to tell me, I found I learned so much. And then the relationships ended up becoming a lot more effortless because as opposed to like skirting around each other, trying to prove to each other that who was right, we're both like, this is what I know. This is what you know. We're on the same team. How can we wonder twin powers this, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been also lucky enough to work with, well, I mean, luck has a lot to do with it. Also just like, and I mean, let me just, you probably don't want this. Let me give you just a bit of praise, a little bit of praise, because you're giving yourself, you know, you're being pretty, when you, and I have a couple questions about this too, but obviously you've worked with a bunch of really great artists, Steve Vai, like you have like all your band is always so killer. You also have like a very commanding presence when it comes to stage, and even at a tiny stage. And I've seen you many times at NAMM. Every year that I go to NAMM, I always make sure to try and catch you play because I love the
just yell at people in a big room, right?
Bro, it's so different because like NAMM is like, and anybody who's watching hasn't gone. It's a very look at me kind of thing. Like it's a very you know, and no one's, it's just like, who can my most hated thing about that entire thing is when you're talking to somebody that you kind of know, they're always looking over your shoulder at somebody to see if there's somebody more important to talk to. It's like, I can't stand
No, I get it, buddy.
Stuff.
And I mean, I think I've been very fortunate from a very young age to have experiences that deflowered my perceptions at a very young age of what the music industry is or isn't. And so much of what I hope for with the dissolution of the music industry and the perpetual social media engine that we're now participating in is perhaps a booby prize of that is that we'll be able to sort of reverse some of that toxicity that came with what we were taught as a society musicians were actually worth in the 70s and 80s. There was this, you know, Robert Plant putting his dink towards the camera and, you know, gesticulating and like a god kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, the industry loved that. They wanted gods. and then all of a sudden when, you know, you and I and everybody else were like, we should be gods too. And then you go out there and like, wait a minute, this fucking kind of fucking ruthless, actually. This is, you know? And then all the Photoshop and everything, like, dude, I looked like a melted version of myself when I was 25 at this age.
I'm going to put tons of filters on it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, but you don't. You see, that's the thing is I find it so much easier when you don't have to pretend you're better looking than you are. Or you're smarter than you are, or you're more talented than you are. It's almost just like, because what I find that makes the practicalities of that is it's so much easier to jam with fucking anybody. Like I feel like I could jam with anybody because I'll just listen, and if it needs me, I'll play what I play, but if it doesn't, I just won't play. It like makes sense, right? Like as opposed to like, you know, first one to the midsection solos kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you not feel the frequency isn't the right term because that really undermines what the the point of the instrument or what the musician would have, but you definitely like you have to serve a purpose in sections. Yeah.
And sometimes the purpose is nothing, right? Like sometimes
Exactly.
the purpose is there's already too many guitar players and everybody's over the 12th fret. Like, dude, I'm just gonna wait. You know?
Okay, so I also have one thing that I've heard about, and this is something I think you kind of have talked about before, is the way. And I sat with your guitar, your newest Keystone Signature model, the real small little fucking guy. It's like really cool. You have like a some sort of, I don't even know if it's a ritual. You sit there listening to trains. I think you mentioned that to me, or maybe I heard that on an interview or something like that. I can't remember. And you sit there with like a guitar and you just listen to drone.
Yeah, it's not listening to it; it's watching it. I think that the best work, and I've said this a few times already in this conversation, and I think I'm hearing myself now, so I'm going to say it again.
Right.
My best work happens when I'm not paying attention to it. You know, like I don't think about what I'm doing. And so I try to distract myself from a certain part of my conscious mind because, again, the need for me to be solid and responsible as a human being, parent, whatever, is really something I don't take lightly. You know, these are things that are really important to me. So that when I have the opportunity to improvise or create or what have you, it's really about ignoring that part of my mind that is finely tuned, I guess, to like making sure that my world doesn't fall apart. And one of the ways that I've found that really helps me in that way is distracting videos while I'm recording. And
okay.
I've tried a bunch. You know, I tried rug cleaning, which is good when you're not working, but it's like irritatingly engaging.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Some of the liminal spaces thing. There's a Dream Pools. It's this video game they put up on Steam, and they have walkthroughs of that, and that's a cool vibe because it's you know, but the speed of it is also important. So I found that of all the media that I can have on that is innocuous enough to give me a sense of forward momentum.
Right.
Which is really helpful. It's like the feeling that you're actually moving is really helpful, but also not be engaging enough to be distracting is cab views of trains driving through snow.
Right.
Because it's an endless thing. So whenever I look up, it's like you're moving. It's like being in the front of the bus, right?
Yeah.
And it's really telling to me, number one, how much I need to be distracted to get out of my own way, but also how easily distracted I am. You know, I'm like, oh, trains or whatever.
Sure.
And then I'm playing or I'm editing or I'm writing. In fact, I've got like a volume control right beside me here that when I'm mixing, I have set up to like ambient music. So whenever I've pressed stop and it's silent in the room, I can turn it on and the ambient music will start playing. And it's the same process. It's like, if I can keep myself in a state of flow, and specifically from the point of view of that being like a reasonably natural state of flow, as opposed to just having to be wasted all the time, it's like it's a practical way for me to get out of my own way creatively, and that's really what it comes down to. It's when I did the interview with Rick Beto on that, and I think the people that were involved in that interview, because they don't think in the same way. Like I know, for example, John Petrucci, who was one of the guys in the interview, he's a very studied guitar player.
Yeah,
sure.
I
see him backstage and he's like practicing with a metronome. And
for
me, I just make big clouds of sound and let them loop while I'm doing other things. And having trains on allows me to think that I'm making a soundtrack for that. And it's just much more enjoyable to me. I don't like practicing. I really don't, dude. Like, it sounds awful.
Well, I guess like when you're trying to distract yourself, you're basically like you have like a loop in your brain that is preventing you from doing something, and you can bypass it by like, like opening the circuit basically. And that one so open circuit, you're just going to open it and you're going to keep it open while you can, focus on something else. But it's kind of similar whenever I have like I said it before, I taught for many years, taught guitar. Some of the coolest stuff I ever wrote was when I was teaching. I just sit there and I wouldn't be trying to fucking write stuff. I would just be like, okay, I'm going to talk about this. And the student would be like, well, could you do it like this? And yeah, I guess you could. I write it like, oh, like, fuck,
what's
that's
also
really cool.
difficult about that is like guitar players are show off. So sometimes I find I get good riffs just when there's people watching me.
Of course.
Like somebody who's like not really a guitar player is like, wow, you play guitar good or something. I'm like, really? Well, check this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
Before you know it, you got something that you're trying to pass off as being nonchalant, but you're like, wow, the only reason we had that riff is because my ego got tickled, you know?
Is that a bad thing? I guess you're right. Yeah.
No, as long as you're aware of it, I think.
Right.
I think that when it becomes problematic is when you deem that sort of participation from a neutral source is so important,
right,
that you need to like have people there and hire them for that and all this sort of thing. And I mean, even at that, I think that sometimes I have my buddy come over just to help me when I'm at the end of a process, and the way he helps me is he just kind of hangs out.
Yeah.
And I can tell just by his body language if the riff sucks.
Oh my God, dude. I do that all the time, bro. That's so important. You get somebody, like we used to have people come to our jam spot and just guys that don't know anything about music, just sit there on their phones and just whatever. And as soon as they look up, you're like, oh shit, that was something cool. That was something cool, you know?
Yeah. Or vice versa. You know what I mean? I'm just like, they'll be sitting there and my whole thought is like, yeah, this part is way too long.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think that getting out of your own way, it's not it's like I've got some people in my world that view some of these tendencies as like indicative of like a type of neurodivergence, right? Like you're autistic. Or I had two family members one Christmas without any knowledge of each other buy me autism blankets.
Right. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. What are
I'm
those?
like, I don't think I'm autistic, man.
Right.
Like,
right.
I think I'm fortunate to be surrounded by people that are conscientious enough of my need to be in a state of flow in order to actualize the things that I do, that they're willing to understand that there's some times where I need to be like that. You know what I mean? I need to be, I need to have that sort of validation, or I need to scream and yell and wander around the studio or whatever. It's like, and I think if you can understand that that's a luxury, like this is a privilege, as opposed to, oh, I'm an artist, and without that, I simply can't create. I think that's just bullshit. But I think that if you're able to facilitate that and not have anybody hurt as a result of that, then man, yeah, go for it. You know, I like to wear only socks while I track bass or whatever it is.
Right.
Actually,
yeah.
That's a little sweaty.
Yeah.
I made a guitar. I covered a guitar with fur so I could play it in the middle of the night. Because if I get ideas in the middle of the night, when I pick up the guitar, it's like way too cold against my fat belly. So so I covered it in fur, and it's really good.
That's like okay, yeah. It sounds kind of gross, but I'm also kind of interested. I don't know, like
I'll get it.
Yeah. I would like to see it.
Yeah.
You like trip over the piss jug on the way out?
Yeah, I don't trip over piss jugs, but. Check it out, yo.
Oh yeah, it is gross.
Furry guitar.
Ew.
Right?
Okay. Is it like an IKEA rug or something, or what is it?
No, I just went to the fabric store and I got a bunch of fun fur, and we just glued it to the back.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's fucking sweet. And what guitar is that? That's like a
Prestige. So they make.
Oh yeah.
Based in Vancouver, and we make an acoustic together, and they just threw me that one. They're really good, man. They're really nice.
That's sweet. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to take too much of your time. You have a bunch of shit going on right now. Specifically, I know Power Nerd, and you're working on this. Like, what do you want people to go? Like, if somebody like just wants to know what you're doing right now, what would you tell them?
Not sleeping enough.
Sure. Right. Yeah, that's apparent.
I mean, I've got 4 projects that I'm doing concurrently that are based on loosely based on the idea of how change is viewed from different lenses depending on your vantage point. So that change can be anything. It can be, a loved one passing away, or getting older, kids moving out, or all of the above. And what tends to happen is when there's a theme that seems compelling enough to write about, there's a gestation period in which I just write freely without analyzing too much of what I write. And in some cases, all those things solidify into a single identity, like this is a coffee drinking alien or whatever.
Right, sure.
But other times when the moments of emotional significance are such that they're more comprehensive, like they've taken a lot more of my mental energy, those moments where I've been writing tend to distribute themselves into multiple different categories, one of which is usually complicated, one of which is simple, one of which is meditative, and the other one is usually like abstract. And depending on how many of those folders start to populate during a writing process, sort of distinguishes how significant that moment has been. And the last time that I've written with the same amount of material to illustrate the theme was during DTP back in 2009. I did 4 records. I did Key, Addicted, Deconstruction, Ghost.
Yeah.
And that was hand in hand with we had kids, and there was a lot of change, obviously, that comes from trying to be conscientiously a good parent, at least. Mm-hmm. And then now, kids leaving and people passing away and parents getting older, all these sorts of things. It seemed like the concept of change seemed to be prevalent in all aspects of my life. And as somebody who typically resists it, I felt that perhaps the best angle I could take to write about this and simultaneously try and find some sort of growth in that process was to view that concept from different vantage points. So what we tried to do was use Power Nerd, Moth, Axolotl, Ruby Quaker Show as being 4 different vantage points of the same sort of thing, the fluidity of just that which we think are permanent, right?
Right.
And the metaphor for moth is simple, of course, because it's, caterpillar into a moth and the transformation, yada, yada, yada. But I think Power Nerd was based in loss or dying.
Right.
And I think that Axolotl as a project is connected to the moth thing, as the Axolotl character is one of the predominant characters in the moth narrative. So having her own album, and she's basically a personification of machine learning in a way, not artificial intelligence, but just the idea of intelligence that exists in a perfect state, and the juxtaposition of the imperfection of the protagonist, which is a human, means that I can view the concept of change from the vantage point of a different type of intellect, one that's rooted in logic. And then the Ruby Quaker thing, I built this crazy spaceship in the house, and we do this green screen thing every month where I do improv with all these different musicians, and the music powers the ship. And then the goal with it all is to make a transition to the next part of my career, which I really feel is about a year and a half away. And it's going to be completely different. And so in a way, what I'm trying to do now is summarize this. And, what do I want people to know about it? Where do people look it up? I don't care. I wish that I hope that the work that I do, I'm accountable enough to my own sense of morality or accountability to understand that if somebody participates with it after I've finished with it, it's with a full sense of confidence that what I've said I can stand behind. But other than that, dude, I don't care. I just want to be able to keep doing it. And I don't want to not put my effort into it. And I don't want to do things for reasons that are for concerns other than my own artistic growth. But I mean, if you want what I do, I got 30 some odd records, and they're all online somewhere, and some are better than others. And I've got 4 more coming out.
So Spotify kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, or YouTube. I mean, it's like, I often say, like, people are somebody on one of the last things was like, I really liked what you'd done on this prior record, and I bought your new one, and it fucking sucks, and I'm pissed off about it. I'm like, dude, well, why didn't you just listen to it for free then?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like, like.
Although a negative review like that is so much better than a meh review.
Yeah, I don't watch them. I don't watch either. Like, I don't look at the YouTube comments.
Sure.
I don't look at the Instagram comments.
Sure.
It's like, I don't look at reviews of the records. I don't.
Right.
And it's not because I feel like I'm above it. I feel like I'm probably just so sensitive to this sort of shit that on some subconscious level, it would affect my creative process if I internalized what people like about it versus what they don't like about it,
Well, yeah, that's a really honest way to look at it for sure. Yeah, you do it for yourself.
I think you have to, because that's the stock in trade is trying to at least be aware enough as I'm able to call myself when I'm full of shit, right? And
sure.
But, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The amount of times that I've done projects thinking with a whole heart that I wasn't full of shit, only to find out later that I was totally full of shit, is such that I can still hang my hat on the ignorance. I'm like, yeah, well, at least you thought you were right. So there's that.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I love
you too, buddy.
I love hearing I love hearing your thought process on this kind of stuff, and I've been a fan of you since. I think I saw strapping at the Croatian Cultural Center a couple times, maybe once or twice.
I remember that. That was I remember that night, man. What's funny is it's like and what you're doing as well, I think, is really cool, man. I think what you're bringing to that realm is really, really forward thinking, and I appreciate it greatly.
Thanks, man.
But I also think what's interesting about like the strapping thing, for example. I remember when I quit that band, and I remember when I quit doing that. The backlash from people who loved it was rightfully so, like, very bummed out.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, I feel that since the beginning of what I've been doing, my creative function is the same. It's just manifested due to whatever hangups I was coping with at the time. Right.
Yeah.
And strapping, I had a real thing with anger. I couldn't figure it out. I think I was so afraid of it when I was younger. That when I finally found that I had the capacity to make destructive sound,
right,
I was like, oh, this is gratifying, on an ego level, to be able to wield these things. And like you say, I there's a certain amount of what I do performance-wise that is, commanding or what have you. But my reason for doing so is it's not a pantomime. My whole view on music is also different than a bunch of buddies of mine, and I've gotten into disagreements with some really close friends about what I'm about to say, and that I feel that musicians aren't responsible for music. It's part of a collective experience, and music exists separate from us. And so claim anything other than the craftsmanship of it as being somehow indicative of your nature rather than what you've been privileged enough to be privy to, I think is arrogant. And so I really take the point of view from what I do is like, well, you're in service to the work. And so if the music's heavy, then damn straight you got to be commanding about it. Yeah. Like, otherwise it's like it's a disrespect to the source of it.
Right.
And I clearly I'm not centered or balanced enough to be out of my way to the point where I'd like to be. But to the extent that I'm able, the moments in my work where I feel like I've hit some good things, like some powerful things or whatever, is not to do with me. It's the music, and my pride in the work that I've done. It's just that I did a good job.
Yeah, right.
Articulating it. And
yeah,
I think where I run out of conversation with some other musicians is when we run into that distinction between us, where they're just, this is my music.
Yeah.
This is me. I'm like, okay, it's cool. It's, I'm not qualified to unequivocally disagree, but as a human, I don't agree,
I kind of think about it like, and this is not a unique take in any way, but like you have like a big chunk of marble and you're chipping something away and it's like in there already. And it's not it's
dude.
just, you're just
Right?
going to get there, and it might take you a lot longer, and it might be more roughly hewn than another artist, but it's like, it's unique to, it is unique to you. So in that way it is yours,
For sure.
but it is there. And like,
For
you
sure.
just need to unearth it and just get it out there and expose it to oxygen and
I agree with that. But I think the way that you come through it is oftentimes where it fails. Like when I listen back to a good idea that has come to me and I hear me in it, I'm just like, oh, dude, that's where you fucked that one up.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
It's like when I hear like a big advertisement for my own neurosis in some potentially really cool idea, because I'm like, wow, this is a powerful idea. I must be powerful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you've got this whole, it gets informed by that. Your lyrics, you're like, I'm going to make a statement that I can stand up there and wield this shit. And it's like, and I think that's where like vetting your ideas so that when you do land on what's right for the idea, you can stand behind it. You can say, listen, that idea is powerful, but it's not because of me. It's because of the idea.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And if you can articulate that to a team as well and say, listen, this is what we're in service of, is this. And this is how that mission statement is articulated. This one push there adds a sense of urgency to this. That's the reason for it. And I think that being able to be analytical enough about your process is not based, again, on being so fascinated with yourself that, it's the only source of entertainment. I just think that the more aware I am, at least, of my tendency to get in the way of a good idea, the more I'm able to kind of, in a best case scenario, recognize that and stand away from it, right?
Yeah. Well, dude,
and shit jokes
and piss jugs, pee jugs. Sorry,
piss jugs.
Sorry.
Dude.
Thank you so much for talking.
I like it so much that I don't even use it. The other thing that's like that for me is Superstore used to sell pomegranates that were frozen.
Sure.
Like
a frozen bag or something, or just like the actual...
just the seeds, though. You know how much of a pain in the ass it is to take a pomegranate apart, right?
Yeah, sure.
They sold bags of pomegranate seeds, and they're frozen, and it was like a revelation. I was like, I fucking love pomegranates, and now I've got this bag. At any time, I can have shucked pomegranates, and I liked it so much that I didn't eat it, and they went bad.
Because you wanted to preserve the idea of the bag.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow.
I was like, and then when I finally got to them, they're all freezer burnt and fucked up.
Yeah, right. Wow, that must be a metaphor or something you said earlier.
Yeah, maybe. And the pee jug's a little different because as long as it stays clean, it's a conversation piece. Otherwise, it's a jug of piss.
Otherwise, it's a jug of piss. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, buddy.
You too, man. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
For sure, buddy. Thanks so much.